500-year-old portrait. So the name of my presentation is what is Mona Lisa? And I'll try to solve this mystery of Mona Lisa today. As the history book says, it's a painting of 1503 to 1506, but as the presentation goes on, we will see that there are some fallacy on the years of its creation. It was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. In Italian they call him Leonardo da Vinci, and it was painted on a wood panel. At that time it was the custom, because canvas paintings, they were a bit later invention. It started in Venice. Painting is in Louvre and many of you have seen it, because the problem is it's a small painting and there are a huge crowd, always a huge crowd, and it's behind a bulletproof glass. So it's very difficult to comprehend the Mona Lisa in the museum in the real time. This is Queen Isabella of Spain. This is a contemporary painting, and if you look at the painting, unlike Mona Lisa, she never looks at your eyes. This is her husband. He was also a king, King Ferdinand, and Queen Isabella was such a powerful woman. She was the visionary. She wanted to, at that time there was no country like Spain. It was Iberian Peninsula. There were few countries. She invaded and conquered Granada in the year 1492, and at the same year she sent Christopher Columbus to an expedition, which we all know ended up in discovering United States of America. They all are contemporary. I mean, the Leonardo da Vinci, Christopher Columbus, Queen Isabella. Let's try to understand this map. Here I have put red marks on three very important countries of those times. Actually, Venice was a country at that time. Genoa was a country. Christopher Columbus was from Genoa. And at that time, the biggest navy in the Europe was in Venice. Venice had a very good trade on the, they were controlling the Silk Route over the land. So other countries of Europe, they were trying to go to India through the oceans, through the seas, and they are trying to find it. So Christopher Columbus, he went to Venice for the support of the expedition, but Venice has no interest, because Venice controls the Silk Route. The next choice is Genoa, but Genoa was not interested, because going after Silk Route is like waging a war against Venice, and they were at that time not really prepared to start a war against Venice. So the third choice and the third biggest navy of Europe at that time belonged to Aragon. Ferdinand was the husband, and he refused Christopher Columbus. Later on, Isabella, she said, well, I will fund you, but she doesn't have any fleet. The fleet belongs to Aragon. When all these are happening, we are trying to understand Mona Lisa. So this is another portrait of Isabella. If you look at the portrait, this is almost a full-length portrait, and which was the custom of those days. Mona Lisa was a really odd portrait for that time. Queen Elizabeth I, she was also a very powerful queen of Europe at that time, and this is her portrait. This is the most famous portrait. Look at the hair, red hair, and all the films that are made on Elizabeth I, they all have this red hair because of this portrait. This one is in National Portrait Gallery, London. I remind you, there are two separate museums. National Gallery is one and National Portrait Gallery is another. In the 19th century, one filmmaker in US, D.W. Griffith, he started to take close-up shots in the films. This is Lillian Gish, many of you must know. She is an actress, and later on she was the wife of D.W. Griffith, and she also has written a biography about D.W. Griffith. Griffith and I in English. When Griffith started shooting close-up photos in the film, he started losing the sponsors because they said that people buy tickets for the films to see the whole body. Later on, another filmmaker, he started taking what is called extreme close-up, Orson Welles, in his film Citizen Kane. I know many of you must have seen it. Look at this extreme close-up, and he started using this technique. And here is another film. This is from Trial. It's a story of Franz Kafka. It's an extreme close-up shot. And these were like 19th century development. And what happened with Vinci when he painted Mona Lisa? Allegedly 1503 to 6, there was another painter in Italy, Raphael. And Raphael saw the painting in his workshop. He was like an apprentice to Vinci. He saw Mona Lisa and he made this sketch of Mona Lisa. This sketch is in Louvre, not in general exhibition, but if someone wants to see it, they have to ask for an appointment for this sketch and they can see it. The characteristics of this sketch is where she is standing. She is standing in a corridor. In Italian they call it loggia, Loggia. Logically we think that this is loggia, it's not loggia. In Italian it's called loggia. And the three-quarter format that was inspired by Mona Lisa. And if you look at her, behind you see two columns. These are Tuscan columns. These were from inspiration of Mona Lisa and Leonardo da Vinci. If we look at the painting sketch of Raphael, you would see that there is a band in the head. At that time, in a portrait, giving a band was very popular. The name is French, Ferronnier band. Raphael, he started giving Ferronnier band in many portraits of his time. And the question comes that is there any band in the head of Mona Lisa? This is not a band actually, this is like a veil on the top of her head, and there's a thin line which looks like a band, and possibly the fabric is muslin. I don't know, I'm not sure, but possibly because at then he was a silk merchant and he used to bring clothes from India. So it could be that it is a muslin. This is another painting of Raphael of that age. The young woman with an unicorn. If you look at it, this is just a copy of Mona Lisa. Say she is in a corridor, behind her there are two Tuscan columns, and just beyond her there is nature. There is landscape. The interesting thing about this painting is during the restoration, the lamb appeared. In the left, it was like it, and during restoration, the scarf over her shoulder, it was removed, and it revealed that there is a lamb inside. And finally, they kept it in this way, that a woman carrying a lamb, and by X-ray, further revealed that there is a dog, a puppy, beneath the lamb. Very interesting. And if you look at the painting, what is very usual for those days that she is wearing a pendant with a big valuable jewels in her neck, which is very common because when people go for creating a portrait, generally they wear their best dress, they generally gather all their valuables, jewels, and try to portray it in the portrait. What happened with Mona Lisa? If you look at her dress, it's like a mourning dress, almost black. There is no color. Isn't it rather unusual for a silk merchant? Because what is very natural for a silk merchant that he will try to give a demonstration of his clothes in the shop in this painting. That's quite natural because he wanted to show the people of Florence that look, these are the clothes are available in my shop. But it's like she looks like a widow. She looks like a mourning woman. And you see her fingers, they are bare. I mean, there is no ring in the fingers. Unusual. There is nothing jewels in her ear, in her neck, nowhere. There is a direct connection between the nature and Mona Lisa. This is the only man-made structure in the painting. There's a bridge over a stream if you look at it closely. If I ask you where she is standing, I just want to know, yes? She is standing in a balcony, you're right. And if we take a closer look, we will see there is just a hint of column, bottom side of a column in the painting. But if you do not look very minutely, you will miss it, that she is in a loggia, in a corridor. And also, I would like to ask you a question for all, that if she is sitting or she is standing. She is sitting. You see there is an armchair. In Italian this is called poggetta chair, and actually she is sitting. But generally when you look at it, you think that she is standing. There's a chance to miss it. This is another Mona Lisa. And can you tell me the difference? Tanvir, please.
I just find color difference, nothing else.
Color difference, okay.
I think overall the painting.
Also look at the dress, the sleeves, they have become colorful. Okay. And Mona Lisa was painted in a technique called sfumato, which is stroking the brush over and over and over. And in Italian, sfumato means smoke, and which creates a dreamlike vision. If you look at the left Mona Lisa, you will think that she is from a dream. And on the right side, actually both paintings, they were done simultaneously in the studio of Vinci. This was kept in Prado Museum. They call, generally the art historians call it Prado Mona Lisa, and the left one is only Mona Lisa. The question that comes to mind that why Prado Mona Lisa is colorful and why Mona Lisa is like morning. There is another portrait by Raphael. Look at her. She is wearing 3 rings in her hand, and in the neck there are very valuable jewels and pearl, a very big pearl. And look at her dress. She is trying to show herself, and what she is also wife of a silk merchant, and this is what should be the portrait of a silk merchant's wife. But why Mona Lisa is so different? So I am coming back to Mona Lisa again and again just to show you the contrast, the differences. So why this is so mournful? We have to go back again in the history. There was a very famous Medici member, Lorenzo the Magnificent. He was a very famous and very powerful Medici family member. He had 3 sons. The younger one, he was overshadowed by his brother. He was a Pope, Leo X, and the youngest of them, he is Giuliano. Giuliano had a boy. The mother died giving the childbirth, and because of this orphan boy, Giuliano asked for a portrait of a woman reminding the son, her mother, and he asked the portrait to Leonardo da Vinci. If you ask me that what is the proof of this man is Antonio Beatis. He was a secretary to a cardinal and he wrote this book. He in fact visited Vinci in France. At that time Vinci was carrying 3 paintings with him. One of them is Mona Lisa, and he described that Vinci told him Giuliano commissioned for Mona Lisa. And the most puzzling thing is Giuliano has died by that time. So it's not worth to mention that this is a commission of Giuliano. I told you already that Vinci was carrying 3 paintings with him. One of them is this one, the Virgin and the Child with Saint Anne. Saint Anne is the mother of Virgin Mary. And look at the composition. One woman sitting on the lap of another woman. The woman behind is the Saint Anne. She is the mother of Virgin Mary, and Jesus Christ is the son of Virgin Mary. And it's according to Sigmund Freud, that this painting represents the craving for a mother of Leonardo da Vinci. In fact, he had 2 mothers, in the sense that his biological mother was abandoned by the father and he was raised by another mother. So Jesus Christ is looking at them. It's like he is craving for his biological mother. And these are not my hypothesis. These are hypothesis of Sigmund Freud. If you see other paintings of Vinci, you won't see the lap. I mean, the Virgin Mary on the lap of Saint Anne. This is by Vinci also, and this one by Bernardino Luini, contemporary of Vinci. You see the same figures, but the Virgin Mary is not on the lap of Saint Anne. This is another cartoon by Vinci. Virgin Mary is sitting on the lap of Saint Anne. And this is the hypothesis of Sigmund Freud. He wrote everything in this book, Leonardo da Vinci, a memory of his childhood. So from there we come to Mona Lisa. Now you can imagine she is a mother, she is smiling to her children, I mean Leonardo da Vinci, that look, I am still looking after you, I am still here for you, please don't worry. And as because they are not together, that explains the black dress, almost black dress, and the melancholy in the painting. And the affectionate mother represents the smile in her face. So it could be one hypothesis that Mona Lisa is not the wife of a silk merchant. In fact, Mona Lisa represents the Leonardo da Vinci's own mother. This is one hypothesis, not given by me, given by Sigmund Freud. So that's all about. I hope I have finished in time. And after Monsieur François gives his speech, you can ask me question, please. Okay. So
Congratulations, because it's very interesting. Yes. I have one thing to. If you go to Paris, you visit Louvre, and try to find the good time, because you know it's very crowded to discover Mona Lisa. There is two options. One option is during lunchtime, because less people, so you will take your lunch in the afternoon, but you can discover Mona Lisa. And there is one disposal. I don't remember exactly if it's the Louvre who proposed that or one agency. If you pay, I think it's something like 10,000 euros, something like that, you can have a dinner at 12 just in front of Mona Lisa. So it's up to you, you can decide.
Very late.
Yeah. Oh, one thing about Leonardo da Vinci, in French it's Leonardo da Vinci. You know, also he spent times in France with François Ier. François I, he was the king of France at this time, and he was very impressed by Italian culture. And Leonardo da Vinci, I think he spent 5-6 years with François Ier, and he died in France, in Blois, which is a castle in La Loire. And we discovered so many things because he was a researcher. He tried to find some war machine, different matter. Leonardo da Vinci is really a genius. Thanks a lot.
Mahmoud is my friend, so I feel proud of him that he written a wonderful book on France, Europe visit, and Mona Lisa in particular. I discovered Mona Lisa in many ways after reading this book. A portrait can be the history of time. That Mona Lisa say a portrait says. History of age, history of time. And a portrait can say many things. A portrait can be translated into a series of text, series of publications. What I have discovered seeing Mona Lisa. And what hypothesis Mr. Mahmoud said, referencing Mr. Sigmund Freud, is that Mona Lisa is not the wife of merchant, silk merchant, but he's the mother of Leonardo. I think the second one is my perception was the second one, that the mother's face is the true picture of everything for a child.
Mona Lisa, there is so many enigma, so many possibility of stories. So it's better to keep the secret and to continue to try to discover.
So my question is, being a doctor professional, how you have developed that much patience for Mona Lisa, and what makes you instigated to write this book on Mona Lisa?
I can tell you one thing, that in my house, you cannot have Mona Lisa because it's close to impossible to have the original Mona Lisa at your home, but you could have a replica. And I have one replica of Mona Lisa hanging at the living room. And sometimes I look at it, and you know what relates it, that you will never think this is a 500-year-old portrait. Any painting, if you just look at it, if you are an expert of painting, immediately you can understand that without any date, without any signature, that it belongs to which period. almost exactly, I believe Mr. Monsieur François, he can also tell that this painting belongs to that generation. But Mona Lisa is timeless. I believe so. What do you think, Mr. François? It's timeless.
It's universal. So
that's
it
very-
cross all the painting, but it's true that you can identify the medieval painting immediately. You know. Mona Lisa, it's true. It's not possible. Which other painter can maybe Delacroix, maybe some paint, but it's very few of them can give this temporal and universal spirit.
So, I'd like to thank you very much for your valuable time. I know time is very precious in Dhaka city. I thank you all, and I would like to thank especially to Mr. Monsieur François, because you know it's very difficult for him to give an allocation of time.
It was really a pleasure to be here with you, all of you, and you are most welcome in Alliance Française for any programs, any session as you like it. You can go to the website. We have a new website with all the activities dedicated. So it will be a pleasure for me to receive you in Alliance Française. So I hope to see you soon. Thank you.